my microphone on. Anyway, welcome to the first session of virtual conference number 4 for the summer of 2012 from APCUG, the Association of PC User Groups. And no further ado, I'm going to introduce Jerry Steele, who's going to be talking about using FamilySearch.org for genealogy research. Jerry, go ahead and take it away.
All right. Thank you, Huey. The reason I decided to speak a little on family search is on TV you get heavily advertised Ancestry.com, and a lot of people don't realize that a lot of the same features that are available on the paid Ancestry.com are also available on FamilySearch.org, which is a free site. So we are going to talk about that today. And I'm first going to go and make a tour of the FamilySearch.org website, and then I will concentrate quite a bit of the lecture on how to do searching, and then a little bit more on all the other areas that I'm just going to mention here at the front so that you can get an introduction. Needless to say, this website has so many features that you cannot possibly cover them in an hour, and if I have enough people show interest, I might cover some other things in a little bit more depth at another session. So first, FamilySearch.org is dedicated to preserving family history. So it is there to help you preserve your family history. And not only does it have records for you to find family history and genealogy connections, but it also has a way of you preserving it without having to pay for Ancestry.com or one of the other online websites. FamilySearch.org is the largest genealogical organization in the world, and their primary mission, believe it or not, without the website involved, is to train and coordinate volunteers that go out worldwide and preserve and index these records. They microfilm and index records from all over the world. For instance, one of the great features is if a county courthouse lets them come in and microfilm, if something happens to the county courthouse, they can come back and get copies of all their microfilm records. This happened about 10 years ago in Hillsboro, Texas, and the county courthouse burned, and they were able to get all their records back because they had let Family Search come in and microfilm. So it's a great way of preserving records without cost to a county and churches and other people. So they maintain all these records, these resources, and then all these services related to the records, and that includes the website. So that gives you some other tools to help share all that information. It is free access to all the resources and services, and some people say, well, why do they, furnish this for free? And I am not a member of the LDS Church. I've just been using their resources for over 20 years. The beliefs of the LDS Church are that families are meant to be central to their lives and that their relationships continue beyond their current life. And so they try to preserve those relationships. If you go to a Family Search Center and ask for help or rent a microfilm, they do not do any proselytizing. So if you are concerned about going to a Family Search Center and that you're afraid that they're just going to make a big pitch about coming to their church, well, don't worry about it. They don't. It is kind of a part of the rules. They do not do that. And the FamilySearch.org, that website also has information if you go looking for it about the church, but in general it does not give you any information without you really going and looking for it. Here are some of the quick facts about FamilySearch.org. There are over 1 billion names in the database to be searched. They get over 10 million hits every day. They have over 3 million visitors in a month. The pages are over 1 million views per day. There are over 1 million registered users, and we'll talk about what that means, the difference between just being a casual user of the site and being a registered user. Since they've launched, they have over 15 billion hits, and I imagine where I got these statistics, it's even more than that by now. It's considerable. They've had over 150 million visitors since they started this website. It is one of the most heavily used websites on the internet. The latest project, which you may have heard about, is they provided coordination and tools for all kinds of volunteers. Made a big call for volunteers to index the 1940 census. It was released in May, and they just made an announcement yesterday that it is 99% done, and that they are going through the final phases of preparing the data to be put up on the FamilySearch.org website. It has been released to the other commercial partners, and that means Ancestry.com and some of the other commercial providers now are making a big advertisement push about being able to get to the 1940 census. If you're patient just a little bit longer, those indexes will also be available on the free site on FamilySearch.org. This was a massive undertaking. There was over 46,000 indexers and arbitrators, and that's how they make sure the indexes are more accurate, is that you index them, two people indexes it, an arbitrator brings up those two results and decides which one is correct, and if neither one of them look like they're correct, they release it back to be re-indexed. So these arbiters make sure that the information is consistent. They had over 10 million on a day records indexed on a day recently. They set a big push to see how many records they could do worldwide to set a new world record, and the goal was to do 5 million records, and as you can see, by doing 10 million, they did twice the many as they thought. Now that the 1940 census is done, they're going to start indexing on immigration and naturalization records. So all the passenger lists are going to be the next one up for indexing for volunteers. So here's a quick tour of FamilySearch.org. And I know this looks like there's a lot on a page, and it is, so that you can get to all the resources from the main page. Where number 1 is, there in the middle of the page, that's your search box, and there's other information there around search box to narrow the search. At number 2, down on the bottom right, if you're just getting started on genealogy, or you're just brand new to the FamilySearch.org site, you probably want to start here at number 2. And then in number 3, which is the learning menu bar at the top, that is where you can go learn more about how to do family search, or learn more about the website, how to become a volunteer for indexing, how they do the indexing. And if you come across some question that you want to ask, there is a blog out there. And provided you're a registered user, you can go out there and ask any question you want to, and all the volunteers, you'll find somebody that knows the answer to the question. And then there's the pointer there to all family search centers. So like I'm sitting here in Bowling Green, Kentucky, and I want to see a microfilm that might only be available in Salt Lake. I can borrow it. I have to pay the postage in order to get it here, but I can borrow that microfilm for several weeks and go over here to the Family Search Center and take pictures or do prints. I use my camera all the time to take pictures of records, or my iPhone, at the Family Search Center. At number 4, there are other resources. So you can search records, which is where it defaults when it comes up. You can search other people's family trees that they have posted. You can look at the catalog. Now this is like the traditional library catalog, but this is for the family history library that's in Salt Lake City, and it is also an index to all the online records, and there are quite a few digitized records now. And then also books that are digitized and available online. Brigham Young University has been the person that leads digitizing family history books, and if you get permission for your family history book to be digitized, it's all digitized, placed online, and put into the catalog. So that'll be how you get to that at number 4. Number 5, down at the bottom, we will talk a little bit about how to go search a specific record collection, or you might want to do a survey of what records are available for a particular locality, and that's how you get to the record collections, is on the bottom left. At number 6 is usually a panel that's reserved for whatever the latest feature is. And the latest feature they're talking about is the family tree, and how you can submit your family tree for other people to find. And so you can go there from that panel in the middle at right. And then finally, at the upper right-hand side, there'll be the help for the website as well as the sign-in for the community. Now, as like for instance, index volunteers, we also have to have a sign-in, so you have to register and get a sign-in. But the reason for that is, as an indexer, I get access to some records that are not available for the entire public. So as in exchange for my volunteer time, I actually get to see digitized images for things that might not be available on the regular part of the website. So we're going to start with the searches. And the usual starting place for searching is there in that middle box, and we'll go to that in a minute here. And you can search by name. You can search by name and an event, both a time and locality. So you might want to look at the War of 1812 or the Civil War in 1865. So you can search by a name or a particular event. You can search by relationships, and we'll see how powerful that is in some of the searches that I've done. And you can search by a batch number. Now, unless you've been doing genealogy for a while, you're probably not going to come across these batch numbers. But if a cousin sends you information and says, oh, this was on batch number 99623 at the Family History Center, then you can search by that batch number. With everything being online nowadays, most people don't mess with these batch numbers anymore. So first we're going to talk about the search box. And the search box right here where you can put first name and last name. First, you want to have a searching strategy. The first thing you want to do is not plug in the most common name. If I plug in a name like James Moore, we're going to see what happens here in a few minutes. So start with the most unique names in your family history. Start with common names. You have to add in some extra criteria. So adding in state, county, or a particular record type will help narrow that search. You want to track all your searches in some kind of a table like a spreadsheet, or write notes to yourself so that you can go back and do another search again in 2 weeks or 3 months or 6 months, because the number of records that are being posted online daily is extensive. And if you search today, 6 months from now when you search, that name may come up that you didn't get today. So I keep a track of a spreadsheet of the searches I've done, and then I go back 6 months later when I think about it, and I do it again just to see what's going on and see if something new has come up. You'll also be able to search by spouse or by parents. It helps when you have a common name to search by James Moore and Mary Baker as his wife, so that you can, then that narrows what comes up by using the wife's name. And you can then search also, you can check that box and say, oh, match only exactly. Now the family history people, the family search people have been doing this for so long, they have special little algorithms. So that if you misspell a name, a lot of times that correct name will come up because they know what similar misspelled words look like as far as surnames and first names. For instance, on the common name searches, I wanted to show you how much it will help to narrow it. I just searched for one of my ancestors. It's got the common name James Moore. It yielded 588,000 results. By putting I only wanted to see marriage records in Texas, that narrowed it down to 28,000. That's still a very, very large number for me to be going to look through on a website. I narrowed it by marriage, Texas, and county, and I got 5,400. So we're going to look at ways to narrow the results. We're going to refine the search at the top left. On the bottom left, we can filter the results. And if you narrow it by residence, the records you're going to likely bring up are census records or city directories, because there are a lot of city directories online at familysearch.org. For instance, I did this search for James Moore, and I just said the marriage place was Texas, and there's that 28,000 searches. So once it comes up, it also gives you this opportunity to filter your results down on the bottom left here. So that filter by area allows you to narrow that search based on groupings that the search finds. So you can start with a particular collection of records, or you can narrow it by some locality. And we can then also back up through that search. So if I narrow it by Texas and a county, then I can back up and click back on Texas again and pick another county. So you can go back and forth. In order to get what collections it found in this search, so I did a search here of marriage, Hunt County, Texas, and I said between 1850 and 1880. But I want to see which collections it brought up. If you'll take your cursor and hover over this little tiny arrow, it will bring up the pop-up window. It looks like this, and it will list. So I picked in that case, I picked Texas death records. I then picked, because it was a marriage record, it picked vital records. So it brought up birth, marriage, and death records. So I said, no, I want to narrow it just to the death records. Then I picked United States, I picked Texas, and now it's showing me a list of counties. Well, I knew my ancestor lived somewhere around Lamar County. Now it helps to know, you might want to look at where your ancestor lived and pick 2 or 3 counties around it also. So I would look at Hunt and Lamar and Red River and other counties that are around it in the north part of Texas. And I could see there are only 12 results if I click on Lamar. So that helped narrow that scope a little bit to see who it brought up. Okay, one of the questions that somebody has put here, it says, does the system search the Family History Center IGI? Yes, it does. We'll talk about that later, both the Ancestral file and the International Genealogical Index. So anyway, I get here, I can pick only the ones that show up in Lamar. And as you can see, when we do get a result, it brings up quite a bit of information. So the Texas death records not only has their birth date, their death date, and where they were buried, but it also might have the residence of their last known residence. So they may have died in another city, but yet for instance, this person died in Wheeler, Texas, but they were living in Shamrock. So if the information's on the record and it's there, then they've indexed quite a few of the fields. Now, one of the powerful searches is being able to search by that relationship. One of the ways that you can search for very common people's names is to search by their parents' names. For instance, my ancestor Hiram Kirkpatrick is somebody I've been researching for 20 years. But in preparing for this lecture, I actually found something new, and I'll show that to you here in a second. One of the techniques of finding more information about an ancestor that died fairly early, where we don't have any newspaper records, or I don't have any other further records, he died before there were vital statistics, is to go find all of his kids. And then when I find all of his kids, is to go hunt obituaries for those children. So I plugged in his name as the father. And the kids did die since vital records were put in Texas. And so I was able to bring up his father's name and his mother's name. Now notice that one of the kids, the mother's name was Mary Staples, and the other one said Mary Stapler. So there is a indexing error here in that it was similar, or somebody just misread the R for an S. So you're going to see that pretty commonly in records. But now here are 4 of his kids that died late enough to get into the records. So now I want to go find obituaries for these 4 people. So use these searches for mothers and fathers to help narrow as well as give you more information about where to find records. So these are really powerful searches, searching by parents. This is especially helpful in locating married women. If we back up here just for a second, you will, these were all, no, this wasn't, this was a woman. See, it came up O.A. Watkins, and her parents was Hiram Kirkpatrick. Well, this was Olivia Kirkpatrick Watkins. So now I was able to find her even if I didn't know her married name because her parent was listed. And that particular record was indexed. Obviously, we can't find things if the records aren't there and they're not in indexes. Any record that has a relationship that's spelled out, they do try to go ahead and index it, but sometimes they are not. So you just have to take what we can find. One of the things that let's see here, skip this one. So what we want to try to do is find variations of names to search on. So one of the common ways I can do searches is not just search on the parent's name, but add a surname in there, add a spouse's name, vary the spelling of the surname, remove the county and state, or add the county and state in there, because sometimes records can be misrecorded, they can be misindexed, and or the names can come up wrong. And so we can see this by, I put in Hiram Kirkpatrick, Mary Stapler as the parents. I just put in the surname Kirkpatrick. And remember when I had that other search up, I had 4 entries? Well, I've got 4 entries, but I've also got a 5th one with just the surname Kirkpatrick with a K left off. And the Olivia didn't come up because her name was a little bit different. So it didn't come up in this index by putting in the last name Kirkpatrick because her married name was Watkins. But I had something else pop up. And I'm sitting there going, wow, I haven't ever seen this before. I wonder if this really is true. And the parent was listed as H. Kirkpatrick and Mary Stapler. They were born, this person was born in 1875 in Wood County, Texas. Well, I know that Hiram lived in both Smith County and Wood County. And so this looks pretty strong. I need to go check this person out. They died in Ellis County. And so this is a good, strong possibility. So I wrote down both the birth date and the death date. And that helps me figure out whether or not the names will come up. And Karen asked if you could search with the first initial, and that's true. You want to try first initials as well as the first name. So you want to search by J, JC, as well as James. So you want to try all those variations because the initials will come up sometimes and full names will come up sometimes. So let's see what happens when I went and searched I clicked on that back here. When you find this record, this little name right here comes up in blue. If you've visited the site before, it shows up in purple. So when I took this screen print, I'd already gone there. So I clicked on this name Kirkpatrick, and it shows me a lot more details. So it tells me about this image. It said, well, here's the name Kirkpatrick, the death date, the birth date, who the father and mother was, the fact that this came from, that the person died and was buried in the Hughes Cemetery, and the burial date, which is a couple of days after the death date, what film number it appears on, so you can write that down, what digital film number it's on, what the image is on the digital film. So all of this is information that you probably want to keep for your footnote. So what I did was I went over to findagrave.com, and findagrave.com is got a lot of the cemeteries on the site, and I searched by the birth date, death date in Hughes Cemetery, and I found Abigail Alice, which is her nickname was Abby Kirkpatrick Giles. This is a daughter to this ancestor I've been doing research on for 20 years, and I never knew existed. So do try all those different variations, and because that will, you just never know when something new is going to pop up. It seems like every time every time I do a lecture for free, something like this, it always seems like I come up with something new. Karen asked that here on this Find a Grave site. It asked if the caretaker of the record wanted to transfer his record to me. What that means is that the caretaker of the record on Find a Grave just means that you're going to take care of any requests for copies of that photograph. If somebody gives you more information, then you have the permission to post it and create it. They're just the caretaker of the online record. That's all it means. If I had done a screenshot a little bit further down, you can add virtual flowers, you can add little comments, so it makes a nice little memorial that you can go in and remember somebody when you find their grave, and let everybody else know that you were a relative of this person also. So at this time, if you've got other questions, bring it up while I am trying to go to part 2. Karen was asking if there are any security issues. Thank you, Huey. If there are any security issues signing onto these sites, not that I know of. The Theos Church and all of the supporting organizations are hyper about their security. In fact, that's why you cannot get to some of these records without being a registered user. Not only do they not want to lose the records to other sites that might pay for access, because they're very committed to making sure these are free, but they also are hyper about not having somebody accidentally change some of the records. When they first started indexing records, they wouldn't let anybody but the members of their church be indexers. And quite a few of us kept saying, hey, we know the records sometimes even better than the church members might know, so give us a chance to do that. And they finally opened that up to the community members. Now they're opening up the access to the records so that you can download some of the images and things like that to people that are registered members. So as far as I know, there's been no breaches of security that I've heard discussed, and I'm sure it would have come up in some of the professional organizations that I'm in. I have not yet uploaded my family history to their website, but I do believe that they do give you the control of what you want to see public and what you want to have private, and it is on your own. I do know that when you upload, you can tell them not to show anything that's of a living person. There is ways to correct information. Karen was asking about if you find mistakes, is there ways to correct? Absolutely. And they may not respond within 24 hours, but usually within a week or so, I get an email back thanking me for telling that. There is ways to make sure that information gets changed. They may add a second index record so that you can get to a record by both entries, just in case that there's some argument about which way a piece of something can be read. But eventually that will get changed. You will get a correction posted. It's not going to happen overnight. Somebody has to screen those. They have to decide whether they're going to add that entry or not. Okay, I'll try to make sure my voice is back up here. So this primarily most people go to that site to do searching, but I want to give an argument to spending some time on FamilySearch.org using all their other resources. For instance, getting started. Under getting started on this bottom right is all kinds of information about how to get started with your family history, how to do oral interviews, what kind of records you might want to find, how to record them. There are videos, there's written stuff, so it depends on how you learn and how you want to learn. So you will be able to go through and use these resources. When you go to that Getting Started website, there's access to a research wiki. Now, if you're not familiar with a wikis online is a way of collecting information together so that more than one person, in fact, the general public, can contribute to the wiki to help contribute information. There is an arbiter, and you do have to be registered in order to contribute something, which keeps people from putting obscene things and just totally wrong information on the research wiki. But this research wiki is just an extensive collection. I'll show you an example here in a minute of what records are available, how to use them. It's a phenomenal resource. There's also video courses. There's some research courses. When you're at the Family History Library in Salt Lake City, there's always classes going on for free. And so a lot of those are recorded and placed on the website. And some of the professionals have allowed their lectures to be recorded and placed out there. So some of the best known names in genealogy have recordings out here. It is unbelievable how much free stuff's out here. And then you've got discussion forums so that you can actually go out and ask questions, and there'll be somebody out there that can answer most of your questions. That you come across a record you don't understand what is, ask them. Somebody will try to figure out what's going on, where to get access to it, how to find it. Now we're going to go up to the top and look at the menu bar. And it's up here across the top. This is how you find family search centers. Go to the area on indexing and go to the blog, and then it's also a second place to find the research wiki. Here's, for example, you can click on step-by-step videos. For instance, this video is only 3 minutes long. Some of them are 10, some of them 15, some of them longer. But take time to go out and look at some of these videos. Some of them are on the website. It's useful to spend just a little bit of time every once in a while going out here and just seeing what videos are out there and what's available. On the research wiki, here's the splash page that starts there. It points out there's like 67,000 records, articles on the research wiki. And you can start with a tour, and it'll show you the wiki and how to get to all the various areas. There'll be something, if you just have a few minutes and you want to go out and take a look, there'll be some featured articles. That these change from time to time so that you can actually see new things. It'll give you some ideas about where to go hunting. And you can contribute if you have some knowledge of areas. For instance, I do a lot of work in Texas, and I know how to use Texas tax lists. Then that's an area that I've been intending to write an article on, so sometime when I get available, I'll probably write an article on how to use those. And then this also is another way of getting at the same discussion forums. For instance, here's one. I just plugged in Find Me Everything, all research wiki articles on Tennessee court records. And so it comes up. There's a generic page for Tennessee court records. There's one on probate files on the probate court. Here's some mention of it on the General Tennessee page. There's a specific wiki on Texas probate. There's also there are also extensive lists of books. So here's the page, the general page for U.S. court records and then Tennessee records. And it literally starts through and talks about which Tennessee courts were existing during what time frame. So if I have an ancestor that lived in Roane County, Tennessee between 1794 and 1830, I would know that I need to look at the Court of Common Pleas and Quarter Sessions, the Superior Courts, the Court of Pleas, because they changed the name a little bit, the Circuit Courts. So with all these overlapping jurisdictions, this is a great place to find out which of records are available during what time frame and who would have jurisdiction over what kind of cases. So, some of them would have jurisdiction over the criminal cases, other ones would have more jurisdiction over common law things like adoptions or probate, things like that. Also off of the wiki, volunteers have taken time to make pointers literally to everything off of the web. Now I'm showing you the example from Tennessee, and there have been an extensive number of volunteers to do that. So here is pointers to all of these digitized Supreme Court records. Some of them are in Family Search records, other ones are elsewhere on the web. And I can click on these and get the reports of cases argued and determined in the Supreme Court of Tennessee for 1813 to 1818. It will tell you if it's a paid site or a free site. So just an extensive resource of records of where to find things from the wiki. Excuse me for a minute. So next we're going to look at, off that main page, the resources menu. This is where we actually get to specific records, to family trees, the catalog, and to books. So the resources menu is this little sub-menu here. So we have records, trees, catalog, and books. So we're going to talk first about specific record collections. One of the techniques that we use when doing genealogy is to try to come up with a research plan. How am I going to research James Moore, who's in Hunt County, Texas, between 1850 and 1880? And I sit down and I brainstorm, well, what kind of records are available? What kind of what information do I currently have? What is available to search? Am I going to have to go to a repository? What repositories are available? So one of the things that you can do on Family Search is go to a specific location and click on America and then Texas and then Lamar County or Hunt County and find out what records are available and what the whether it's a book, whether it's microfilm. And so we want to go do a search specifically by a particular kind of record. I've done a click on going to Texas death records, and it comes up and it tells me about the Texas death records with a small description. But if I click on this little arrow that says learn more about the records, it will come up and give you an extensive description of the record, so that you have no doubt. One of the problems that I have with Ancestry.com is you search on one of their databases, a lot of times you cannot find out the specific details of where that information came from. It might have 2 lines, it might have 1 paragraph. Instead, this one has who was the author of it, was it a manuscript that they filmed, how many reels of microfilm it is, whether or not it's on 16mm film, whether it's digital. and then there's extensive notes. Now, I put a little dollar sign here, meaning you hit the jackpot. If you see this little red line come up, it says Texas death records are available online. Click here. This means they've taken all that microfilm and they've digitized it. And so now you can see the images, or you can see more information. Here is an example of a Tennessee probate court book that I found the digital images online. And so you can see here I was looking for Robert Kirkpatrick's estate. This is the index to the record, and then it just goes on. So it's got, this is image number 7 out of 136. And you literally can sit here and space one image at a time and look at it like you did a microfilm roll that you brought in at a family history center, or sometimes those things are indexed. Now, also available is searches for family trees. Keep in mind that searches on family trees also, she was asking me earlier about the International Genealogical Index. Family trees search here also searches by the Ancestral file and the Pedigree resource file. And so these are the older indexes that were available at the family history centers, and now they are known as family search centers. Remember, when you do get information off of a tree, it's only as good as a person's personal research, and I would definitely start with searching the records and indexes first, but don't eliminate using family trees, because you can find quite a bit of information out by those family trees. Now finally, I wanted to bring up that getting a user ID and in being part of the community makes you where you can access all of their resources. Used to, we'd have to have a separate ID for the indexers, a separate ID for the website, one for the blog. Now they're all under one single sign-on. If you were a member of the LDS Church, your user ID for the LDS Church is the same as this single sign-on. If you volunteer to do some indexing, then your reward is that you get access to some of the records, or you're able to download copies of the images that maybe the general public isn't allowed to do, and that's just as a reward for the contribution. Sometimes the owner of the images has restricted the access to the digital images to somebody that they can identify, and because of that, there is more records available if you have user ID and are logged in than if you just search from the FamilySearch.org website. So a lot of the digital images require a login. And finally, if you come across a website that has one of these little indexer badges, or somebody that's posted it on their Facebook page, then be sure and thank them for their extra time and effort that they've used, because these little badges are awarded only for people that have done indexing, or like in this one was participating in that 24-hour record day. So this is their way of rewarding us for our participation. So finally, remember that FamilySearch.org has free access to records and indexes. Try to use all different kinds of ways to do queries. Look for a person by their name, their initials, by parents. Look for digital images. Go into the research wiki. Go to some of the video training, and most of all, try to enjoy all your sites to Family Search. So if there are other questions, I will try to answer those now. Karen says she has her records in PAF. Is there a program to get the record out of PAF? If you will look at PAF, I believe you can export that into GEDCOM. If you can't figure out how to do that, and you have a family search center or close by, you might call them and ask them, if you bring a PAF over there, can they help you get that into a GEDCOM format so that you could upload it to something else. So GEDCOM is it's sort of like having comma delimited files for spreadsheet information, be able to transfer it. GEDCOM is the genealogical index. It's a way of expressing all that tree information in flat files. And almost every program I know of inputs GEDCOM files. Now, some of the more common software, like if you purchase something like Family Tree Maker or Generations or something like that, will actually read the PAF records directly. You mentioned various sources to the FamilySearch.org. Are those sources available? All of the records have source information, and almost all of it's going to be available on the website. There are a few data sets that may be available, but they're only restricted to either members of their church or you have to have that user ID. But everything that you're finding indexes for or sources there. Now, the wiki will point you to other things that are available outside of the website. So if I'm not understanding the question, please clarify. Karen, it says she's lost track of a second cousin that used to use traditional genealogy results, and is there a way to find her? If somebody, for instance, I found a record that was posted in, I believe it was Ancestral file or somewhere like that, and I wanted to get a hold of her, yes, there is a way through Family Search, a Family Search Center, for them to track her down through her LDS membership. Now, they won't just give it to you. What they'll do is pass a message to that person and let them contact you. And I've got a kind of a funny story with that. I wanted to contact this person, and I wrote a letter and got information, that my contact information, and months later I got a collect call from a prison in Utah. And this cousin was in prison who had done family history, and through this LDS contact had been passed that information, and they called and told me where to find some records. So you never know when you do something like that where you're going to come up with the information. Any other questions? If not, I managed to end with enough time for questions and still give you 10 minutes for a little bit of a break here.
You certainly did. You're ending right on time because these are 50-minute sessions. I'm going to be ending the recording in just a second. And a reminder that our next session has to do with cyber crime and tracking, and I'm hoping our presenter gets online. He's not here yet, but he will be here shortly, I hope. I'll change the screen. I'm going to end the recording now. Thank you very much, Jerry.